All right, potential shift here, protect first, profit second. Today we're going to be talking about futures trading versus options trading. And let me just say right off the bat, I am not an anti-options guy. I think a lot of very smart and very skilled traders trade options, but this is going to be an honest breakdown of why I think futures are structurally better as a trading instrument, especially for smaller accounts under $25,000. Now, I've spent a lot of years trading options, trying to maneuver around the PDT rules, using spreads and new accounts and timing. You name it, I tried it. I even tried funding the account for more than $25,000, thinking that was a fix. Obviously, it didn't turn out that way. Just letting you know, I have a ton of experience with options, so, I've been on both sides of the aisle here. So let's start with a basic question. Which instrument is more beatable in the long term? If we want to play this game long term, thousands of trades, which instrument provides us with the greater advantage over a long period of time, futures or options? So options do provide a number of advantages over futures, mainly the flexibility to trade any stock you want. I mean, that's the big one. You can play Tesla and Google and Microsoft. You can play individual stocks. That's big. All these different underlying assets, plus the ability to do spreads. It gives you an enormous range of potential strategies. So for a new trader, that flexibility to tinker with new strategies is very important. So honestly, with new traders, I might even say, do options first. Learn about options because you're going to want to try different things, and options lets you try different things. They also have a predefined risk options, especially with zero DTEs. You can make really small plays, for a couple of pennies or 5 cents and hope to get big returns, almost like a lottery ticket. And that's attractive. That can be attractive, especially if that's your strategy. If your strategy is based on, making small plays and trying to hit home runs, that's valid. And options gives you the ability to do that. And for whatever reason, options are more popular and easier to work with. They also make trading, conveying your trading ideas to other people easier. Futures can be intimidating if you've never used them before. And it's just sort of the way the market is set up. Not quite sure why, but options are more accessible. But here are your problems with options. You're fighting time decay, number one. You're paying premiums, and sometimes you can have really gigantic spreads in options. The difference between what you buy it at and you could sell it at immediately. That can be significant. All of these costs, the premiums, the decay, the spreads, are magnified and even bigger if a stock is particularly volatile when you are trading it, which is usually exactly when you want to be trading it. When a stock is in the news and moving and it has a catalyst, all of these costs are greater than if it was just sitting there doing nothing. So your time decay and your premiums and your spreads all go up when a stock is in the news and in play. And selling options requires a large amount of margin and has a big long tail risk involved, which means 9 times out of 10, retail traders are not selling options, they're buying options. And buying options is a play not only on the direction of the stock, but also a play that the volatility will increase, not decrease. This is important to understand, that even if you get the direction of the underlying stock right, if you buy an option during a particularly volatile time, when it has a high IV, implied volatility, and sell it when the volatility has cooled off and gone lower, you might be directionally correct on where the underlying stock headed, but still lose money because your premium got destroyed by the IV, by the implied volatility. That can happen very often when you're buying options. So that's tricky to navigate. So with options, you not only have to be right on direction, but you have to be spot on with your timing and your understanding of the volatility changes. That's the math of it, straight up. And that's why the Greeks exist. Options don't ask, were you right about direction? They ask, were you right about direction, timing, and volatility? All right, let's talk about futures now. Futures are pure price movement. You don't have time decay breathing down your neck or volatility or Greeks to worry about. If you get the direction right, you win. If you get the direction wrong, you lose. And with futures, if I'm right by 1 point, I make exactly the same amount that I would lose if I was wrong by 1 point, and that matters. Clarity like that is important in an emotional risk management game. Also with futures, you get a transparent profit loss. When you put a futures play on and you decide where your outs are, you know exactly what the risk reward is. There's no Greeks, no calculus involved. This makes risk management and risk calibration easier. It's a cleaner emotional feedback loop. There's no second guessing if you could have structured the play differently, or you could have squeezed out more profit if you put a spread on. Options, there's always that question, did the time decay eat me up? And clarity like that is important. With futures, you have clarity in your profit and loss. And the big one, there's no PDT, no pattern day trader rules. That's huge. Anyone who has run into the PDT rules knows that they are nothing but trouble. Frankly, I think they were designed to hobble retail traders, if I'm being completely honest about it, make them easier to pick off. The PDT rules take the one major advantage that small individual traders have, and it strips it away, and that's agility. Agility is the one inherent advantage that we have over the big institutional players and the market makers. And the PDT rules take that advantage and say, nope, you don't have it anymore. They make it extremely difficult to stay nimble. So with futures, you don't have to deal with PDT rules. Futures do have their disadvantages, though, and the main one is the loss of flexibility. With futures, you're going to have far fewer instruments to trade with, ways to trade them. That might feel very limiting, especially to new traders who are still trying to develop a strategy, feeling things out. You can't protect your downside with futures the same way you can with options. When you buy options, especially cheap options, zero DTE options, you do have a predefined maximum loss, the value of that option. And if that's your strategy, buying an option and holding it to the end, win or lose, you're not going to have the same certain downside loss that you would have with options. Futures are going to be a little more open-ended there. So the trade-off really comes down to one thing, and that's flexibility. Is the flexibility of options to play individual stocks with spreads and varied strategies worth all of the costs involved? Personally, I feel that for somewhat experienced traders, the clarity and the lower costs of futures really outweighs the flexibility provided by options over the long run. The options costs between the time decay and the spreads and the premium are just too high to overcome. Now, if you play specific stocks, if that is your strategy, I play specific stocks when catalysts hit or earnings plays, options might be your only choice. But you also have to be honest with yourself. Are you actually playing individual stocks because of solid catalyst-based events and something you have an edge on in that regard? Or are you really just riding broader market moves or sector moves, through the stocks? In which case, why are you paying all the costs involved with options when you can just trade futures for the broader market moves? So you really have to ask yourself, am I really playing individual stocks or am I just playing broader market moves? I don't think that answer is as cut and dry as some people may think. And I have to say that personally, I'm not sure that options are really a beatable game, especially for smaller accounts with PDT restrictions. You know, it's just another hurdle you have to overcome in a game that is very, very difficult to begin with. Guessing the direction alone and managing your risk properly are extremely challenging without the time decay and the volatility concerns and the PDT rules weighing you down. You know, you need every percentage point of advantage and edge you can get. And options, you know, they can be punishing. They can be punishing and they can eat away at your edge. So yeah, for a final thought, you know, futures may not be as flashy or as well known as options. You can't talk about theta and delta and iron condors with futures. But futures do make it easier to survive in a game that is all about survival. So yeah, protect first, profit second. Potential shift here. Don't go broke.